All right. Well, I think in order to make the most use of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started. And anyone else who's joining can just jump in with us where we are. So thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. And we are here with UCLA Extension. I'll let Jennifer give her introduction slide.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us. My name is Jennifer Dixon, and I'm the Manager of International Recruitment and Partnerships at UCLA Extension. And I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much, Education USA Mexico, for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So it looks like on our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about Education USA in case any of you are unfamiliar with the work that I do. So I'm Katie Lajoie. I'm one of the advisors based in Mexico City, and I cover residents of Mexico City, the state of Mexico, and Morelos. And I'm here with my coworker, Maya.
Hey everyone, thank you for coming tonight. My name is Maya de la Torre, and I am the Education USA advisor for the states of Oaxaca, Guerrero, and Veracruz. So Katie and I do the same job, just in different parts of the country.
And of course, we have 16 different advisors in total. So if where you live wasn't named, you can go ahead and find your advisor. We're Education USA Mexico. You can look us up on social media or on Google and you'll find our information. So we'll talk a little bit more about the resources we offer. And then Jennifer will take over and talk about continuing education and extension, as well as certificate programs and optional practical training, as well as international student services. So we'll continue on and talk about what is Education USA. So we're a global network of advising centers, and we're part of the US State Department, Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So we're not just in Mexico, but we're all over the world. But specifically in Mexico, we have 23 different advising centers. Everything that we offer to students is free. So these webinars, in-person advising sessions, different sort of workshops that we have are all free to you guys. And our target is students, higher education institutions, governments, and NGOs that all focus on education, of course. And our goal is to provide you with accurate, comprehensive, and current information about the full range of accredited US higher education institutions. And if we continue on, part of our free advice and services, like I mentioned, is in-center. So at the 22 different centers that we have info sessions, one-on-one advising sessions, workshops, and other materials from universities that come and visit us. If you can't come visit us in our centers, we also like to come to you. So we'll do outreach events for fairs, where different universities come and participate, or at specific schools. And of course, we also do virtual events just like this one. In addition to webinars, we'll also hold fairs, seminars, or one-on-one advising sessions. And of course, we have what we call our 5 steps to studying in the USA, starting with researching your options, following financing your studies, completing your application, applying for your visa, and then preparing for your departure. And if you're interested in any of these steps, we will add our information in the chat so you can access it. And without further ado, Jennifer, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Katie. Wow, Education USA is definitely busy and a fantastic resource for everyone here. So thank you once again for having me. As we mentioned, I'm going to be sharing some information about continuing education, as well as several other hot topics around coming to the US and learning a little bit more about a non-traditional path. As we go through the information, it can be a little dense. So if you have questions, please hold them to the end and I'd be happy to answer them. And then as Katie mentioned, there will be contact information shared at the end as well. So what exactly is continuing education or extension? I know sometimes these terms can be interchangeable or used kind of simultaneously. So when we say extension or continuing education, we are really primarily referring to a division within a university or college that services students that are less traditional or perhaps have different academic goals than degree-seeking students. Now, these programs are designed to serve entire communities. And they serve communities in a wide age range. So some of the students might be young, 18-ish students that are traditional undergraduate age, but they could be also a more mature student, someone in their 80s, 90s that's just looking to go to school for fun. As you can see, there's a ton of different directions that extension and continuing education can go in. The programs are designed to be accessible and address community needs, such as agricultural courses are often very prominent in rural areas, and entertainment studies is something that's offered in metropolitan areas like Los Angeles. Extension programs sometimes offer courses that are designed for students to learn purely for fun or for personal growth. Also, extension and continuing education divisions often offer classes for credit. These can be classes that can be transferred to a degree-seeking program, such as a bachelor's or a master's degree. Now, there are obviously lots of different reasons why someone might pursue education. And that's why we like to say in an extension or in a continuing education division, we really truly welcome anyone that has any type of goal related to education, whether it's personal, professional, or preparatory. Continuing education and extension divisions are incredibly powerful, as our title states, and I'm sure why most of you joined tonight to learn more. They can be a great place for you to get started, and especially if you're just interested in coming to the US and getting started in some type of education program. Admissions processes can obviously be very daunting, and so this is definitely an option that's going to be a little bit different. We're going to take you through some of those differences today and some of the similarities. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that for starters, extension programs exist at a variety of institutions, both public and private schools, small, large, metro, rural, and everything in between. Extension students oftentimes have access to resources such as facilities and faculty through their program. So for example, at UCLA Extension, where I work, students can participate in clubs and organizations at UCLA, as well as study at the library and take part in networking events. And as you can see here on the map of the US, there are campuses like this all around. At most institutions, there are different divisions for different academic journeys. So for example, at UCLA, we have 3 different divisions. We have our undergraduate, which offers bachelor's degrees. We have our master's, which grants, graduate, which grants master's, and our extension division, which is the division of continuing education. Now, in our division, we do offer certificate programs, and these allow international students to study at UCLA for a short period of time and reach a specific level of competency. The extension division can be a great fit for a visiting student because this part of campus aims to serve students that may be a little bit different, have a variety of goals, maybe someone that is only there for a short time. So it might not make sense for you to be at an orientation with lots of students that are planning to be there for 4 or 5 years, but rather you need something that's tailored to your needs. So that's why this could be a really good fit for an international student. Now, typically extension programs are designed for people looking to advance their careers, get a promotion, stay up to date with industry trends, or take credit-bearing classes to transfer. Attending an extension program in the US has a lot of advantages. Often students are seeking training such as management. They may be looking to jump right into those specific management skills, and they maybe aren't looking to take a ton of general education courses. So a program that you can really shorten your length of study and dive right in can be very appealing. Of course, sometimes students are looking to take credit or non-credit courses with the intention of pursuing a college degree down the road or prepare for a degree program. In the US, it can be common to pursue a certification in cybersecurity, and someone might decide that they want to get a certificate in cybersecurity to prepare themselves for that certification exam. So there are a lot of different types of goals that students come to an extension program for. And like I said, we truly welcome everyone with their own personal goals. There are some key differences to point out. Most often in an extension program, there are things that are going to vary from a traditional campus. So for example, I mentioned our student populations ages can really vary. For example, at UCLA, our undergraduate student population is typically 18 to 22, but at Extension, our population average is 22 to 40. So often students come to Extension with some years of experience and helpful life skills. The other major difference is technical training and hands-on learning. The courses at our program are less theoretical and more project-based. However, some of our courses do have a traditional course format. So I like to say it really depends on the program you choose and, of course, where you're attending. Courses can oftentimes be taught by industry experts rather than a traditional professor. And we like to point out that these programs still have the same quality education as any university does. When you attend an extension or continuing education division, those courses are still certified and still part of the accreditation of the main campus. But with that being said, there is less competitive admissions because the intent is to provide access to higher education to a broader community. So for domestic programs, extension programs are typically open enrollment, which means students can register for classes simply by paying for the course. For international students, there are usually some specific requirements that are going to help ensure you will be able to secure a visa. There are admissions, though, that admissions requirements that are still much more simplified than if you do a traditional admissions process. So, for example, you might find that the application is very straightforward, does not require an application. Many of the continuing education programs or extensions across the US have very specific teams that work on those applications, and they're meant to give you very quick feedback and it'll let you know whether or not you're in the program and what documents you need to provide. Another big difference is flexible formats and course offerings. So, for example, courses are often offered in the evenings and online, including sometimes even on the weekends. It really depends on the school and the program. Another difference is, as I mentioned, you can study for a short time. Some programs are as short as 3 months, and this really can allow for you to take advantage of coming to a program like this, even if you can't spend as much time in the US as you'd like. So to conclude, extension programs can be a great alternative to pursue education, especially if you're interested in a certificate, which is what we're going to dive into next. So in this section, we're going to talk about certificate programs. These are very popular with international students in the US. As we have discussed, not everyone fits in the traditional student mold. For students seeking to study and work in the US, oftentimes they are looking for an alternative program that allows them to gain the skills they need to get hired and usually are looking to complete their program a little bit quicker. So the certificate program can be a really great fit. Certificate programs, which some universities do call diploma programs, consist of a sequence of courses related to a specialized field or topic, such as business studies, filmmaking, marketing, graphic design, project management, journalism. Each program is designed to help students achieve a specific level of competency. Certificate programs are not degree programs. However, many US students who have a bachelor's and/or a master's degree do enroll into a certificate program to advance their careers. Certificate programs can sometimes even help students prepare for a certain certification or help students boost their resume in a specific industry. And there are all kinds of certificate programs out there. At UCLA Extension specifically, we offer over 40 different F1 visa approved programs that allow students to participate and study full-time in the US. I like to point out that you're going to find a wide variety at different schools. So if you're looking on our website and you don't see a program that you're really interested in, that doesn't mean that an extension or a continuing education program doesn't offer it elsewhere. At our campus, our two most popular programs tend to be business and entertainment studies. And I think that's largely because of our location. UCLA Extension is in Los Angeles, so we're very well known for Hollywood and entertainment industry. And UCLA Extension does offer a very rich variety of programs in those specific studies, such as acting, cinematography, directing. And in business, we do have a lot of businesses that are headquartered here in Los Angeles, being a metropolitan area. So for those of you that are looking at programs, keep in mind that location can definitely play a critical role in what types of programs a university is offering in their extension programs. Now, hopefully this gives you a better understanding of the different variety of certificates available, but I do want to take a closer look at what these kind of look like when you actually get started and how they're structured. So I have put together some sample schedules for students here at UCLA Extension. Now, of course, schedules are going to vary participant to participant, school to school. But this should give you an idea if you were to get started in a certificate program, how it can really vary from a traditional bachelor's degree. So this program is what we call a 3-quarter program. It would take a student about 9 months to complete this program. So basically, in one academic year, you're completing the entirety of the program. And you will probably notice that the courses in this program are all directly related to the topic of the certificate, business and marketing. That is very intentional. The courses are, their aim is to really help you learn the skills right away. They're very relevant courses that allow you to jump right into the material. I also want to point out that you'll see students here are taking 12 units. 12 units is considered full-time on the quarter system, which UCLA is on. So bear in mind that if you do a certificate program and you want to be an F1 visa student, you still have to be full-time, and certificates can definitely be arranged in that way. To give you an idea of a year-long program, I've also put together a sample of our entertainment studies program. If you look closely, once again, you'll see that the courses are very similar in the sense that they have very specific material you're jumping right into. But the course material is vastly different than the certificate in business. And that's because the certificates are very specific and they tend to be very niche for what you want to study. Now that you have a better idea of what a certificate is, let's take a closer look at why students typically choose a certificate. So as I've mentioned, there being advantages to the extension and continuing education programs, there are advantages to short-term programs such as certificate programs. Number one being the duration. They tend to be about 6 months to 1 year. Another is the opportunity to study with U.S. students and professionals. You are not in a closed cohort of other international students, but rather you're in a room with all different types of learners. Another advantage is that our courses are often taught by industry experts versus traditional faculty, so that you have the opportunity to gain the valuable skills as well as network with your instructors. The coursework is centered on practical knowledge and skills versus theory. And as I've mentioned, the admissions requirement for certificate programs do tend to be far more flexible and require less documents. So for example, at UCLA Extension, our main requirement for the certificate program is an English language proficiency exam. We do not require any other admissions tests, so that can be a very big difference. And students have OPT opportunities, which we'll talk about in a moment. These allow students to work in the US after they finish their studies. And lastly, many certificate programs are considered to be a more cost-effective option for students that are considering doing a master's. I also like to point out that certificates have shown in research that they can lead to a salary increase. We did a recent study and we reported that students averaged over a $15,000 salary jump after completing a certificate. And certificates help secure a more fulfilling role. Of the participants we surveyed, 76% of them said that they felt more fulfilled in their careers after completing a certificate program. So there's a lot to be said about certificate programs. Now, of course, I know some of you might be considering a master's degree. And there are definitely very wonderful things about getting a master's degree. But there are definitely some things that you want to consider. One of the biggest things that we tell students to think about is definitely that duration, not just the duration of the program, but the actual admissions process itself. Sometimes students are eager to get started, but application processes can take over a year. So depending on where you attend school, obviously the requirements are going to look very different. Oftentimes we're comparing UCLA programs with other UCLA programs. But I do like to point out here that at UCLA Extension, as I mentioned, we don't require a lot of extra documents or exams for you to get started. We try to really streamline the process so you can get started right away. And of course, once you get started, the goal is to have you be able to complete the program in half the time that you would for a master's. Now, another benefit is the ability to dive right into those practical skills, as we mentioned, as well as the networking opportunities and the opportunity to do OPT. So one of the biggest advantages is optional practical training, which is what we refer to as OPT. And after as little as 9 months of studying, you can actually stay in the US and work for a year after you complete your certificate. So we are going to talk more about that opportunity because it's a great opportunity to pair with your certificate. So as I've been saying, optional practical training, OPT, is an opportunity to gain hands-on work experience. OPT is a temporary employment authorization that allows students to utilize the knowledge they gain in the classroom and pair it with practical work experience. According to the Open Doors report in 2021, 23% of the total international student population in the US pursued OPT. Now, approximately 48% of our students at UCLA Extension took advantage of OPT. So we like to say it's a very popular program and it's a really great option for students. Some of the advantages include being able to really explore the field and learn valuable insight before returning home. Perhaps you are new to the field of business and you really want to explore marketing. This experience of OPT can bridge the gap between the classroom and the realities of working as a marketing professional. Real-world experience is valuable on a resume and can lead to meaningful employment when you return home. OPT is a full-time paid employment opportunity, so it does allow for people to make money while gaining this experience. And because OPT is a benefit of the F1 visa, it makes the process of staying in the US and utilizing current connections very feasible. So for students at UCLA Extension, there is a major advantage to be able to remain in Los Angeles and work considering the prosperity of LA and the connections that our students already have with their instructors and their peers. This is something to think about. If you're looking to get that work experience and the education piece, doing them together can be really beneficial. Of course, you do have to be eligible, so let's talk a little bit more about that. OPT is a benefit of the F1 visa, so you will have an F1 visa and you will not be required to get another visa for OPT. However, you do need to be enrolled in a full-time program for at least 1 academic year. So as I mentioned, UCLA Extension, 9 months, a certificate that's 9 months long does qualify for 1 academic year. And in other places, it's important to focus on how this might be structured. You definitely want to ask the institution you're interested in how it works at their school. It may look different. And you do have to be in the US at the time you apply. And the job that you apply for does need to be related to what you study. I do like to point out that applicants do not need to have an employment offer to apply for OPT. In fact, the applying process probably looks different than what you would expect. So first things first, you do have to decide if OPT is right for you. Sometimes you will have commitments back home that you need to return to. 9 months is maybe all the time you have to come to the US, and so doing OPT might not be an option. You also might not be eager to do this type of work here right away. You do have to be eager because you're going to have to apply and interview for these jobs. So you need to be excited about the opportunity. and really ready to put yourself out there and attempt to get one of these roles. Now, deciding if OPT is right for you is something you want to be thinking about early on. After you've made that decision or you started exploring that option, you should start attending webinars, information sessions to learn more about OPT and working in the US. Most offices here in the US, or most schools in the US have offices, I should say, that help students navigate the OPT process. So specifically, they can help you with applying for OPT and give you crucial information such as deadlines and processes. Additionally, there typically is an office that helps with visa-related questions. So this is a great place for you to ask any of those nuances that you need an answer to as you get ready to complete your program. You do want to take advantage of these opportunities early on to get the most out of them, and that includes network. So when you're a student, if you are interested in working here, you are going to want to make sure that you're setting yourself up, learning about what type of opportunities are there at your campus. Many of the instructors at our campus are happy to provide mentorship as you navigate. They would be happy to, provide some information about what it's like to work in the industry. Additionally, on our campus, a lot of the peers that you have in your classroom are a great resource as well. We always tell our students, you never know who might be sitting next to you. It could be the head of human resources at a big tech company. It could be someone that has already had a job similar to the one that you're looking for, and you can definitely chat with them and learn more. We also recommend going to the events that your school organizes. Most schools are going to have ways to encourage you to get to know other students and peers and learn more about the community, and that's a great way to get involved. And as I mentioned, there are teams dedicated to helping you through the process. So identify your advisors early on and ask any questions you have. Work with the team to establish your goals and your personal timeline. We're going to talk about student support in a moment, but one of the most important things is you need to advocate for yourself and be mindful of crucial deadlines. It's very important to not miss any of the deadlines. Now, to give you a better idea of the proper timeline and kind of how some of these deadlines look here, I put together a visual that can definitely be a little overwhelming. Now, please bear in mind that this can change at any time, but this gives you an idea of how OPT applications are submitted. So they can be submitted to USCIS for processing as early as 90 days before your program completion. So for many students, they're starting to apply for OPT 3 months before they finish their program. And it does require some time to get an approved application. So we do recommend students submit their application early on. Now, as you can see, there's different steps along the way. Our team would definitely be helping you through this application timeline. This is not for you to necessarily need to memorize, but this is just to give you an idea that it can be a little bit of a lengthy process, and it's important to be mindful of deadlines. Now, one common question we get asked is how long can you work on OPT? We know sometimes students have heard mixed information. So we want to clarify that students are eligible for 12 months of OPT at every degree level. So as you can see here, if you are completing a certificate, you will be eligible for 12 months. If you have earned a degree in a certain science, technology, engineering, or math field, STEM field, you will be able to apply for a 24-month extension of the OPT. So instead of doing 1 year, you'll actually be able to stay for 2 years. Now, I do want to point out that UCLA Extension does not currently offer any programs eligible for this extension, but there are campuses out there that do have programs. So this would be a great opportunity to make sure you ask the institution if they have this opportunity. Now, I want to point out that OPT is a great way to obtain work experience in the US. Even if you plan to return to your home country, future employers are definitely going to be likely to value this work experience. If you are seeking a local job opportunity, make sure you start networking with alumni and professors. They're usually very receptive and helpful to our students. We also like to tell our students to find employers who really value our international students. For example, in Los Angeles and many other metro areas, it's a huge advantage to be actually an international student. Many international students are fluent in multiple languages and have a diverse background that they can bring a huge value to a company. And then, as I mentioned before, be very mindful of your deadlines. Make sure you're asking questions if you're not sure if you need to submit something. And then, of course, utilize resources. We're going to talk some more about the resources. So I would say that most US institutions want to know that we are here for you. We pride ourselves on helping students navigate challenges and celebrate victories. Every school will vary, but most schools have an office dedicated to international students and the international processes. These schools oftentimes have designated advisors known as DSO, Designated School Official. These DSOs, or Designated School Officials, can assist with issuing I-20s, issuing F1 visas, student visas, helping students navigate rules and regulations, transferring schools when applicable, travel outside the US, and the OPT application, as we've discussed. As I've said before, it is important to advocate for yourself. You have access to these resources, but you've got to make sure you ask if something is unclear. We do our best to provide support, and we really do our best to also connect students to the community and make sure the process is as fun and informational as possible. So many of our international students take advantage of things such as orientation, cultural events like attending football games, and all kinds of different activities that these international student service offices will be able to host and put on for you. One of the other resources that we highly recommend you take advantage of is career resources. Career services and support at UCLA Extension offers many different types of support for students. Most US institutions have some sort of career service and support office. These often are going to be where you'll go if you're looking for job boards, networking events. For example, many of the career service teams in the US will have some sort of portal like we call ours Handshake, but this portal is where there are a bunch of jobs that are going to be listed for students to apply to. We also can help students with things such as LinkedIn, cover letters. Here at UCLA Extension, we actually have a virtual workshop that's actually centered on international students. It's really to help students learn about the basics of, what it's like to apply to a job when you are an international student. So keep in mind that we like to tailor our information and really support you through every step of the process, including that career service pivot or career pivot and where you might need some help with career services. I also like to point out that our academic departments offer a lot of great support for our students. So if you're wondering what types of classes might be helpful for you to really reach your goals, there's probably going to be someone that can help answer those questions. And then, of course, it's great to know that if you attend a US institution that has a location that you are interested in working in or maybe living in one day, bear in mind there's great networking events you can take advantage of. At UCLA Extension, we have a lot of students that partake in a lot of events around Los Angeles. Because they're there, they're able to go to things like a networking brunch where there's maybe a lot of accountants sharing valuable information about the accounting community. And of course, the Alumni Association. Most schools in the US have a very tight-knit alumni association. They'll plan events, and they have a very robust network. So definitely recommend taking advantage of that. So I've shared a lot of information. I really hope that you've gained an understanding of the enriching opportunities and knowledge available through extension programs, as well as certificates. Additionally, we hope you've had a better understanding of OPT and how it can potentially lead to a fulfilling journey. And of course, this was a lot of information. So we do want to provide you some details on how to follow up with us. And of course, as I mentioned, there will be a Q&A as well. So I'm going to give everyone a moment to write down these details. before I stop sharing my screen to take a look at the Q&A. But please feel free to reach out to me at iprecruitment@uclaextension.edu. And I'll pass it back over to Katie because she might have some additional information about reaching out to Education USA before we take Q&A.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was some awesome information. So I really hope that our attendees were able to take advantage of that. And any questions that you might have about how to apply to one of these programs, whether it be with UCLA Extension or another extension program, remember you can contact your Education USA Center that's closest to you. I sent previously in the chat our website, which has our directory on it, or you can always reach out to mexico@educationusa.org and we'll direct you to your advisor.
Fantastic. So I'll take a look here at the questions in the chat. Just as a quick reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We're happy to answer those. Yeah, I see there's a great question about the different types of certificates that are offered. That's a great question. So at UCLA Extension, we often kind of hear a lot of these different words thrown out intermittently: certificate of achievement, certificate of completion, certificate of proficiency. Really, all of these things at UCLA Extension kind of mean the same thing. You are going to get a certificate of completion once you complete the certificate program, as well as a transcript. So depending on the institution you go to, most of the time you will get a transcript that shows all of the classes that you took at that institution, just as if you took them in a traditional sense. So hopefully that helps. And Katie, I don't know if there were any questions that you got ahead of time. Feel free to let me know if there are some that you wanted me to answer as well. I do see there is another question here. Let me take a look. Great question. So there are fees and tuition obviously associated with each of the programs. It's really going to look different at every institution. In terms of scholarships, it is challenging for international students to secure scholarships in the US in general, but I definitely recommend reaching out to the institution that you're interested in. Most institutions are going to be very transparent about what kind of funding is available and what the really odds are that you would be able to get that type of funding. We really try to be very transparent at UCLA Extension that there really isn't much funding available for international students, and we want students to be really prepared. Part of the application to get a visa at most US institutions does require a form that you fill out that shows that you have the finances to complete that program. So you will need to have that money regardless, and you do want to be prepared for that. So those are some of the things that we do share with students as we get those types of questions about pricing.
I know at least one question I get frequently from students is, well, what do I do about the visa? So I know, Jennifer, you covered that, that UCLA Extension covered or offers the F1 visa for the programs. And just to explain a little bit more of that process for students, first, what you'll do is you'll apply to this program at, let's say, UCLA Extension. You'll receive that acceptance letter, and that'll have a form called I-20. Once you have this I-20 form, is when you go to the consulate or the embassy to apply for the student visa. Of course, if there are any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
See, there's a really good question about after you finish a certificate program, are you able to transfer? This is a kind of nuanced question because it's two-part. So first off, if you are working on a program, let's say the Entertainment Studies certificate, and then you want to continue on and get a bachelor's degree after you finish the certificate, that's actually very popular, and students are encouraged, if that makes sense for their career goals, and they would like to go on to get another degree, they're more than welcome to do that. However, in terms of transferring, you can potentially get transfer credit for the courses. It really depends on the actual courses you take and the institution that you want to attend afterwards. Many of our classes at UCLA Extension do actually have an articulation with all of the California's state and University of California schools, making transfer credit very feasible. However, it's very program specific. So you really would want to speak to an advisor and talk through what those goals look like and make sure that you're taking the right classes for that type of program that you want to do. The other part is you would still need to go through another visa process. So your visa that you are issued for a certificate program, it's just for the certificate program. So you would have to reapply for another degree program. And like I'm sure Katie mentioned, there's a lot more information to be had about that. I'd really recommend reaching out to Education USA to kind of talk through that process. But that is definitely one of the things you want to think about.
Yes, absolutely. That is something that your Education USA advisor would be happy to look at in depth with you to make sure that you're enrolling in the right program that can get you those transfer credits to go to another California university.
That's a great question about location for OPT, and it does depend. We actually have had students that have done their OPT in another location. It's really just going to depend on the situation and the job offer. So it's definitely, I know, probably difficult in terms of wanting to know an answer to some of these questions, but a lot of times with location, that's going to be thesis specific. So we can definitely chat more about that if you have a goal in mind that you want to say work in New York City, but you want to do the program in Los Angeles. That's a common one that we get. We've had lots of students do that. It just does have to go through the proper processes to do that. So yes and no. Maybe. I did want to just mention one last thing. I will put a link to our website here. This does have a lot of information about the different types of programs, as well as kind of more explanation of that process that we were mentioning about applying and kind of what the F1 visa process looks like, what documents you need for an I-20. There's just a lot of great information there. So feel free to check that out. Feel free to reach out if you have questions. I always tell people sometimes you have to really digest the information before the questions come. So that's perfectly fine. If you do want to connect with me after this webinar, definitely reach out and let me know that you came to the presentation so that I have that context.
Of course, thank you so much, Jennifer. We'll give it another minute here. If you have a last question, feel free to type it in the chat or unmute yourself and share it. But again, Jennifer, thank you so much for all this information. I think it's been really helpful and really useful. especially knowing that you can do a UCLA extension program, have the possibility of transferring to another university in California. I didn't know that. So I'm always learning as well. I really appreciate it. It seems like we don't have any questions left in the chat, so thank you to everyone who took time out of their Wednesday to attend. As always, you have Jennifer's contact, you have Education USA's contact, and I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Yes, well, thank you all so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. We'll definitely stay in touch, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Sorry, it looks like there's one last question in the chat. I just saw, Angelica Cruz.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, so if they want to maybe rephrase it, or maybe if one of you maybe understand what they're asking, it looks like they maybe copied and pasted something, but I don't know what exactly their question is.
Yeah, I think Angelica, can you clarify what you're referring to when you say some college programs?
And it's perfectly fine if you want to follow up via email afterwards. Maybe you were looking at something and not entirely sure and want to revisit. That's totally fine.